Hi, everyone. So glad to have you here with us joining for day 3. I'm Tamara Tatham, head coach of UT women's basketball program, and I'm really excited to share this special moment with you all. We're in our last day of camp, and we obviously wish we could have done this in person. But we know that once things get back to normal and it's safe to do so, and it's possible, we're going to get back on the court. We had an opportunity to learn from you. You had an opportunity to learn from us and about our program. And I want you to know that our community is so important to me. Engaging with you, getting to know you, lifting up your voices. These are things that are truly important to me as a coach and a mentor. That's why we're here today. We have the opportunity to hear from these incredible women on how they got to where they are today. They're not just great basketball players, they're philanthropists, they're TV personalities, they're writers. They're making a difference in Canada, the US, and overseas. We're sisters for life. We challenge each other, we support each other, and these are bonds that we'll share with each other for the rest of our lives. You know, it's funny, when I look at it, basketball is such a small part of what they've done. They're great. They were great students in school. They're doing great things right now, and they're giving back to their communities. But they're also Olympians. They're the best in their sport in the history of Canada. Okay, I can go on forever, so I'm not going to give it all away. On another note, we got people joining in from all over. We have people from Montreal, Calgary, Toronto. I'm joining in from Brampton. So please, let's use the chat box right now and tell us where you're tuning in from. All right, we got some Montreal. Lizanne. Ooh, Nova Scotia, Saskatchewan, BC, London, New York. Nice. Edmonton. Wow, Germany. Olivia. Frankfurt. Wow, Serena from Brampton. Jada, Toronto. All right. So we also want you to know if you have any questions at any point, use the Q&A button or the chat box to pop them in there. You can send your questions in English or French. We'll find a way to translate it. We want this to be as engaging as possible. So let's keep the questions coming. We promise we'll get to as many as we can because there's a lot to cover in an hour. So let me introduce my guests. I have Lizanne Murphy, two-time Olympian from Beaconsville, Quebec, motivational speaker, and now working at the Canadian Olympics Committee. We have Alisha Smith, my sister, Olympian from Brampton, Ontario, motivational speaker and client relations manager at BDA Sports. We have Miranda Ayim, two-time Olympian from London, Ontario, pro basketball player in France right now and aspiring author. We have Kia Nurse, Olympian, pride and joy of Hamilton, Ontario, NCAA champ, WNBA all-star, TV analyst. Okay, you know what, Key? I can go on forever. Okay, but I can go on and on about all of them, but I'm gonna let them do most of that talking. I just wanted to say my piece, brag on my sisters a little bit, because I know how humble these women are. Okay, I'm gonna get out of the way here. I brought in one more special guest. We have Justin Alliman, a good friend of mine. We coached together with the Raptors 905 in the G League. He's an author and an NBA skills trainer and WNBA skills trainer. And he's here to keep us on track, keep us organized, keep us focused, so we can hear from you, you can hear from us, and we can get the most out of this action-packed hour. So Justin, take it away.
Well, first, I want to thank you for that amazing introduction of myself and all the rest of the panelists. I think I speak for every one of us when I say we're extremely excited to get this started underway. So I'm just going to jump right into it. Let's start with you, Kia. You're the most recent graduate. What was your high school life like?
Yeah, so I went to St. Thomas More in Hamilton. I was there for all 4 years of my high school career. I actually was playing Team Ontario the summer of like 8th grade into 9th grade. And that was the year that I, excuse me, actually picked basketball over soccer. So that was kind of the first time that I had to decide which sport I wanted to take more seriously. And obviously I stuck with basketball. And when I was 16, I don't even know what grade that is at this point. It's been so long. I went to McMaster University I was supposed to be at the national team. There was their tryouts, but I was just there to learn and get experience and play against some really good talent. That's where I met all these lovely ladies. Be honest with you, I was terrified out of my mind. They obviously aren't scary people, but the first time being in the gym with all these Olympians right after they had come off such a great showing in 2012, I was like, why am I here? And I've spent all my time with the national team from that point on. We went to China that year. That was also a big trip for me. That was my first trip with them. And that had a lot of its journey itself. But I think for me in high school, a lot of people had that kind of misconception of you have to go play in the States to get to a good NCAA school or to get good looks. Like you weren't going to do it if you stayed home in Canada. And my family was very much about, look, if you're gonna play in the States and you want to do that, that's fine. If you're good enough, they'll find you. So what we did was I spent probably 2 or 3 tournaments a year in the States, just at like Boo Williams, the Washington tournament, playing those AAU tournaments with my friends from here. And we would go in and we beat up on some American teams and it was fun. But that's how I kind of ended up getting into the looks that I did and ended up going to college at UConn after that. But that was pretty much my high school career. I did everything I could to stay in Canada and prove that you didn't need to go to a prep school to get to a high level school there. And I was very fortunate in being able to do that.
It's very interesting. Most people wouldn't know that, but I'm glad you shared that. Jumping to you, Miranda, you went to school in London, Ontario, just outside the GTA. What was your high school experience like? Did you have guidance, support available? And how is it different today than it was when you were there?
Yeah, I think Kia highlighted some of the difference already between my generation and her generation. Like prep school wasn't even like on my mind at all. It didn't really exist at that time. So the way that I did that was just played for my school, Saunders Sabres, Saunders Secondary School in London, Ontario. And I played with a club team as well. Thankfully, I had parents who were really involved in the process and helped guide me to some good decisions and put me in good places. Ended up playing club ball in Ingersoll, and with the help of various scouts with Scotty in Toronto and playing with the national team as well, since I was going into grade 9, I was able to kind of get some looks from people down in the States. But I think the important part in all of that was really just having people that I could depend on and walk me through that decision process. Because when you're at that age, there's a lot going on. There's a lot you don't know. You don't know who to trust. You don't know exactly what kind of environment you're walking into. So really taking a look at what you value in a team, in a coach, and where you want to end up. It's not just about that basketball piece. It's not just about joining the best team. It's about where you can really thrive and working with people who you respect and who can really encourage you to flourish. Nice, Mary. You said it best. Like you had to figure out who you can trust during this time. And there's not that many people at that time when I was growing up. For me, we had no prep school. We had this prep school in Virginia that contacted my sister and I and wanted us to come down there. And my mom was like, no way, that's not happening. Don't even think about it. Like they didn't know what to expect. They didn't know who to trust, right? So jumping to you, Alisha, what was your high school experience like? You were Miss Basketball Canada coming out of high school and you played on the junior team. You actually played with Kia's sister. So what was that like in high school?
Yeah, high school for me was like, it's definitely not like how it is now where there's so many options. There was like OBA, high school, and like then go wherever you need to go. So that was great where I didn't have that many choices. I didn't have to think through a lot of things, but I didn't really have I would say the guidance that I would say is open to a lot of athletes now. So I didn't really know what to do throughout the process. I started playing basketball in grade 7, and I just wanted to follow you and, Patrick, my brother, my sister. And I was like, I just want to play because my sister and my brother are playing, because my friends are playing. So I ended up just getting started. Some will say pretty late, but I think my athleticism and my work ethic and all that kind of stuff had really kind of brought me into a place where I could kind of flourish a little bit. And obviously having a lot of family support. My mom and dad were like at every game. I remember my dad being at every game with his video camera, yelling at the refs, didn't know anything about anything, but he just was so supportive of us. So that was great to have that. And a lot of the coaches that I had growing up didn't necessarily know the process either. And so I didn't really have very much guidance. So I just kind of looked to coaches and those that were around me to help me out a little bit. But yeah, I don't know, basketball for me growing up in high school, as you said, I was Miss Basketball Canada. Some things ended up working out for me on court. And I remember being with the junior national team. We ended up, our group together, along with Kia's sister, Tamika, we actually ended up creating history where we were like the first junior national team, women's national team to qualify for a world championship. So that was a fun experience for me that opened up my eyes to a lot of what could be possible moving forward. I remember being around a lot of the women from the US national team and hearing their stories. And so that was what allowed me to sort of open up my eyes to what was kind of out there. And playing with a local team when we were living in Scarborough at the beginning. Didn't really travel much, but then as we moved out to Brampton, that's when I started playing with the Sultans, and we started playing in the States a little bit more. And then I started to understand the process a little bit more, and then ended up going to UMass, following behind my sister.
Nice. I mean, I had a different path than you, completely different high school path than you, where I didn't play national team. And Liz, you and I had a very similar path. We both didn't play on the national team growing up throughout our high school years. How do you feel? How did your high school experience go in terms of even national team? Did you feel behind in the sport? I know you played other sports as well, but did you feel behind in basketball at all?
Yeah, I never felt behind because I didn't even know Team Canada was a thing. And like coming from Quebec, our system is a little bit different. You play for your high school and you also play for your club, like your city. So I went to a really small high school. I mean, there was 150 students in our 5 grades because high school here is grade 7 until grade 11. And so I was in a tiny school, and my high school I played every single sport, but it was more seriously played in the club teams in the community. And I played provincial team soccer. I didn't play provincial team basketball, and I got a scholarship to the States. And the only reason I chose to play basketball was because I was getting like hundreds of letters a week. So with my family, we kind of said, oh, okay, I guess I'm better at basketball. Like I'll play basketball. And then in that, I made the decision to go to play in CEGEP here. So that's the 2-year school after high school. So it's like grade 12 and 13 in Quebec. And I went to play for Dawson, which the whole Dawson women's team is here. So shout out to Dawson. But it was there that I really took basketball way more seriously. And I was only a basketball player at that point. And I got recruited to the States, and I went to school in the States. And I only heard about the national team because, well, I watched the Olympics on TV, but I didn't actually make the connection between me and that. And because I'm an English kid from Quebec, I wasn't immediately put through in like the French stream of playing for Team Quebec, then being pushed into the national team. So I kind of slipped through the cracks. And the only reason I got invited to Team Canada was because when I was at Hofstra in the States, I like broke this record, and I was in USA Today for like most consecutive double doubles. I was like leading the nation for a while. And then Alison McNeil, our coach of Team Canada, called my coach and said, hey, you have a Canadian at Hofstra. Like, you should tell her to try out for Team Canada. And then I tried out for Team Canada, and Tamara, that's where we were both at this open tryout, and we both make it to the Olympic team. So by all means, I only realized like, oh crap, I'm behind when I got to the national team, and I saw everybody there who was like best friends. They knew all the drills. They had like all the Team Canada gear. And I really felt at that stage I was behind. Whereas before that, no, I was like on my path, playing at my school, doing really well in the NCAA. So I only had this imposter syndrome like when I finally made it to Team Canada, which probably should have been the moment that you have the most confidence.
Oh, that's awesome, Liz. Really cool, really cool.
So sticking on the topic of high school, did you know where you wanted to go while you were in high school? Or did you know that you wanted to go to college, the WNBA? Did you know that you wanted to play pro? I'm going to direct this to you, Kia. Did you have these sort of things figured out while you were in high school, or did it come later on in life?
I still don't have those things figured out, in all honesty. For me, once I was getting towards the end of high school, I think a lot of, similar to T and Alisha, my older sister was kind of my everything. Like, she was the reason I played basketball, and I wanted to follow in her footsteps. So I mean, CIS was an option for me, right? And NCAA was as well. And I decided for me, like, I wanted to go NCAA, and I was talking to her about it, and I'm like, okay, so I can get a scholarship, and like, then what? Like, do I just get a job after that? Like, that's because that's what she did. She didn't go play WNBA because at that time it wasn't as lucrative for her to go get a job in the WNBA when she could go. She was in journalism, so be a journalist. She would make more money doing that. So she's like, why would I keep playing basketball? So for me, I always thought that it was like NCAA was like the end. I didn't need to do anything else. Similar to Liz, like the national team, I knew about it, but it wasn't like a ton. I didn't really get to know a bunch about it until I came to the tryout at McMaster. And that was kind of probably like my first time when I was like, oh, like, I've heard all these names. Now I can put faces to these names. Now things are starting to make sense. And like, oh, you can go to the Olympics in 4 years. Like, that's when that all started to come in. So I never grew up saying like I wanted to be an Olympian. I don't think that was a part of just like, it wasn't on TV all the time, right? Like, growing up, it was Vince Carter and the Raptors. There wasn't even like women's basketball on TV. So did I think I could go to UConn? No, not at all. And now I think today, now people get to see us, right? We're on CBC playing our Olympic games in Belgium and stuff. So now young women can come up and say, look, I want to be an Olympian when they're younger. And that's something that I didn't have the opportunity to say. And then with the WNBA, senior year of college was probably the first time when I was like, this is where I think I can actually play professionally in the WNBA. I didn't think so. And for my first 3 years of college, I was probably like the 4th, 5th scoring option at UConn, which is cool. I was behind some really amazing basketball players. But I never looked at myself like, oh, I'll go in the first round, or I'll even get drafted at all. So that's kind of when I was like, I'll play WNBA. It was always NCAA, make it to the tournament, play a couple games there, and I'd be happy.
So let's take it back a little bit. Let's talk about your recruiting process for how you actually got to UConn. Were there any other schools that you were considering, and how did that process unfold for you?
Yeah, I was not expecting UConn to come anywhere into my recruiting process. I had actually finished off narrowing it down to my final 5, I believe, before I went to China with the Olympic team. And I played there, and my dad called me while I was there. I was like, Dad, I'm tired. I'm hungry. Like, there's a lot going on right now. And he's like, do you want to come play a tournament in Washington when you get back? And I was like, why? And he's like, well, your friends are playing. And I was like, okay, my friends are playing, I'll go. And I went to that tournament. We played really well. We won a bunch of games. And then all of a sudden the next week, there was a bunch more calls from Kentucky and Tennessee and UConn and like big name schools. And I was like, oh, so I have to reopen all this up, because I hated the recruiting process altogether. And so my final 3 actually were very different. I had Indiana, which was a complete rebuild at the time. Coach Kurt Miller coached pretty much 3 people in my family. So we knew he was a really good coach, and we thought that was a good option. Penn State was the one I really wanted to go to. There was, they were like middle of the pack. They would probably get to like the Elite 8, and that would be great. And then UConn was there, and I was like, if they win a championship and I'm not on their team, I'm gonna be pissed, because I had the chance to do that. But I also was very worried that I wouldn't play and that I wouldn't get any minutes, and I would sit behind a Brianna Stewart and Mariah Jefferson and Morgan Tuck. Gratefully, I would sit there. I would think it was absolutely understandable. But for 2 years, and then 2 years, I would have my chance, right? And I wanted to make sure that I got the best out of my experience. But overall, UConn was the one place where I said, I'm gonna be a better person and a better basketball player. And they had the programs I wanted, the education that I wanted. So it fit for me. It doesn't fit for everybody, but it fit for me. And the way that he coaches was similar to how my dad coached me growing up. So that was okay with me as well.
Yeah, Key, I think I remember, I don't know if it was Colombia we were in, where Gino came to the tournament, and I was like, oh, you guys here, like, wow, okay, he's out in the building. So I definitely thought that was going to be a very viable option for you. He's coming all the way out there to see you play. So if we switch gears to Lizanne and Miranda, like, how did you two handle being student athletes? Do you guys have any tips on how to balance it all? I know, Liz, you got into med school at some point right after you finished. Murr, you went to a very high academic school in the States, Pepperdine. So what was it like for you guys balancing school and basketball?
Well, first off, we gotta acknowledge our pre-college, well, my pre-college connection with Liz, because I actually went, I went on a recruiting trip down to Hofstra, and Liz was my host. And that's where we first met, right? I don't think we had met before that. So that was our connection. So I slept at her place, and she took me around and showed me all the spots. I didn't end up going there, but it was a great trip. And then
Not because of the recruiting trip though.
Not because
it was a great recruiting trip.
beautiful.
Murr chose to go to Pepperdine, which is in Malibu on the coast of the Pacific Ocean. So I was up against a big challenge. I had no chance of getting Miranda.
Yeah, I mean, SoCal is a nice area, so that was definitely a draw for sure. But like T said, the academics there are really good. It's a high level. And for me, I'm a big nerd. So for me, education was always first. The reason I continued playing basketball was because I wanted a free education. I didn't want debt by the time I graduated. So the combination of the education factor plus the coach, plus just the whole school just had a very good, strong foundation. I knew I would have a strong support system. And that's part of the reason why I got through those 4 years, because I had a strong support system. We had strong academic advisors who really invested in helping us through that whole process, because part of playing basketball and going to school is just that whole time management deal, and having people around you who can help you through that, kind of sort through your priorities, make sure that you are taking the right classes that you want to take and that fit into your schedule, because sometimes there's a bit of a give and take through that whole process. That's super important to take a look at. And I knew that I was going to get that when I was going to Pepperdine. Liz?
Yeah, on my side, well, like I said earlier, I only made Team Canada in university. So I was on an academic pathway the whole time. I mean, I studied microbiology and biochemistry in university. So I was on the science pathway, and my plan was to be a doctor and play my 4 years of basketball, have a great experience, and then move on to the next thing. And I think this touches a little bit on what Kia had said earlier, and and it's a common story for a lot of us, in that we didn't really know what was possible. And none of us, like, we were on arguably the Olympic team, but didn't make the connection with the Olympics. And it was only in our case, for the players who went to London, it was only when we didn't qualify for the Olympics that we said, oh my gosh, like, we could have gone to the Olympics. And that changed everything in my life. And that happened in 2007, when we were in Colombia and we didn't qualify for the Beijing Olympics. And only at that moment, the whole time I was just like, oh, I'm on Team Canada, this is cool, taking like some selfies with the Team Canada jersey, but didn't link it to the Olympics. And so for everybody at home, I think that that's a real big thing that us as women do. We often have this like imposter syndrome of like, oh, I can't really do it. Is that even possible for me? Will I be good enough? Can I do it? We're probably evidence that you can. Like, everyone here has completed their degrees. We're all studying great things. And yeah, my parents had a major freak out moment when I was like on the pre-med train. And then I was like, hey, I want to go to the Olympics. Canada hadn't gone to an Olympics for like 4 Olympic Games. And everybody else was like, what are you doing? You're throwing your life away. Like, this is a terrible decision. But if you have a dream, you can actually do it, because when we made that decision in 2007, that was the year I graduated from university. I stopped my studies. I decided to go play professionally in Europe, found an agent off of Facebook. Like, it was the most crazy pathway, but then we made it to the Olympics. And then now it's like expected to go to the Olympics, and they're expecting to win a medal in Tokyo. So it's like, if you're at home, set your sights way bigger and believe like that you can do it. Because I wish I would have done that.
I love that advice, Liz. I love it. I feel the same exact way. I felt that way when we made the team together, and I was like, we actually could have went to the Olympics. That's where my dream started. My Olympian dream started on the national team. Cool. So we're gonna switch gears.
So, like Tamara said, let's switch gears and let's talk national team, actually. But first, Kia, your family legacy is incredible. I mean, you have a brother who plays in the NHL. You have another cousin who's also plays professional hockey. Your dad playing the CFL. You, WNBA. What does your family legacy mean to you?
I mean, they've left a lot of big footsteps for me to fill. And I find that's pretty similar with a lot of people, whether it's your family members or whether it's just people that maybe went to the school that you went to, the high school. Like, people leave all these massive footsteps that everyone's like, you need to fill this, or you need to be better than they were. And I think the legacy that they've left is that they're really good athletes, but they're even better people. Like, I feel you can't choose your family, but I'll actually keep these ones because like they're decent humans. But I think it's also just understanding that I learned a lot about their pathways, and it's great. What worked for them worked for them. Sometimes it works for me, but a lot of times it doesn't. And that's okay. I've decided not to step in their footprints, but I make my own path around theirs. And that way we just have all these people who are building each other up and learning from a lot of different pathways and learning about experience. So the legacy that they leave, as long as we're good athletes, I think that's one thing, but we are representing our parents. Like, our parents are who made us who we are. And what they did, what they sacrificed to get us even halfway to this point. You know, I'm never gonna be able to repay my mom and dad, but if I'm a good person, then I think they'll be happy.
Well, speaking on legacies, you're creating your own legacy as well. You joined the national team when you were first 16 years old, and not many people can say they've done that. What is it that makes you want to continuously rep your country?
Well, I've also been very lucky that when I joined the national team that I was surrounded by incredible women like you're seeing today. I'm glad that everybody gets to know them on this level. But if I'm walking around the gym and I'm seeing people like Lizanne, who has the most energy I've ever seen in a human being ever, you know, Tamara, Alisha, Mur, Shona, Kim, people who come back every single year, Natalie, and they give their heart and their soul to this team to represent not only their families and themselves and what they've done for their careers, but to represent this country, because we're lucky. We live in a really good country. I mean, we're not perfect like anybody else in the world, but I'm proud to walk around and say that I'm from Canada. It's one of my favorite things to say. And I've played alongside some incredible leaders, some incredible basketball players, even better people. I remember sitting at the dinner tables with these guys and they're like talking about taxes, and I'm like 16 sitting there like, I feel like I have nothing to enter into this conversation, but I'm here. So, you know, they've taught me a lot about life, a lot about napping, a lot about figuring out, you know, how to get through tough situations. And for me, that's a representation of this country, is like having people who are as passionate as we are, people who don't look alike, right? Like we are all very different. We come from different cultures and different families. When we get along, we find a way to fight for a common goal. And we get to do it representing an incredible country. So why not do that every single year?
Awesome, Key. Really, really good points there. Liz, I want to turn it over to you here. So you played on the national team for 10 years, and your journey wasn't a straight line as some of the other panelists. Can you tell us what your game-changing move was to have such a long, consistent role on the national team?
Sure. And when I joined the national team, I never expected it would be that long. I think I'm loving to see the chat box is on fire. So I'll try and summarize a few into it. Because I was academically driven, and Kia's right, like I am probably one of the most energetic people you will meet. It's transfers across everything I do. And I think that's what allowed me to set really high goals academically and in basketball. And I faced also in my career, because I saw something in here about setbacks. Like I faced some serious setbacks in my career as an athlete. I tore my ACL twice. So I missed 2 summers with Team Canada. One of them, I tore my ACL 8 months before the Rio Olympic Games. In that time, my best friend also passed away. And so there's been some major obstacles in my life. And it's part of what allowed me to have a long career with the national team, in that I felt grateful every time I was there. Okay, we all know it. Everyone who's on a team, you spend a lot of time complaining. That's also what helps you like build sisterhood when you're on a team. But overall, I felt so grateful to be there. And like my dream to, at the beginning, to be a doctor, that was my first dream. My second dream to go to the Olympics, they kind of joined. And when you're in a hard time, because right now we're not even practicing, nobody's on the court, it's so hard. And at the times where I couldn't even walk because I was in a hospital doing rehab for my knee, when I was literally picking my friend up to her chemotherapy appointments, I kept the dream in my head. And I really, if you can do that and really have your eyes on the prize, the daily grind, the stuff that's so hard, it actually becomes exciting. And you get pumped up by it, and it's what fuels you. And it's what builds the links with all of your sisters that are on your teams, or for the men in the house, for your brothers that are on the team. But that's what fueled me. And I think at the end of it, after 10 years, Tamara and I, we came in together and we retired together. And we were like, how did 10 years fly by? We still think we're 20 years old, so athletic, when we're like the grandmas of the team. But if you really find what fuels you, what excites you, whether it be academic or athletic, that is what's going to help you get through the hard times.
Thank you. Thank you for those answers. I'm pretty sure all these attendees wanted to know that. It's very interesting that you'd share that the hardships also go along with the good parts. It's about highs and lows and being able to balance it. But, you know, what was it like playing at the Olympics? I'm going to direct this to Alisha. You got to play with a lot of the girls here, your sister Tamara, Lizanne, and Miranda. And rumor has it that you guys were all roommates at one point in London.
Well, you know, I mean, that was actually a fun time. I'm not gonna lie. We, being an Olympian for me was like a dream since I was like 15. I got invited to a senior women's national team training camp at 15, and way too early for me at the time. I didn't know what I was walking into, but I didn't make the team that summer, but I did walk away with something that I felt was more valuable to me. And that was the burning desire to become an Olympian. Like I saw the camaraderie that all the women had together, how they competed, the pride that they had of wearing Canada across their chest. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, I didn't want to do anything else, but this is what I wanted to do. And that was my basketball goal for myself. And so went through that whole process of trying to get there, trying to get to the right school, doing all that kind of stuff. And once I got to the Olympics, I mean, I would say it was more exciting the day that we made it to the Olympics, on Canada Day that summer, when it was like the last possible chance, like we were the last team to get in. That I say was probably one of the most exciting times of my life. And then actually being there, you said before, like I was there with my sister, like that was a dream come true for us. Being in London, we had family there. We had our parents were able to come out and stay with family. Like that was, it was a dream come true for me, for sure. And then, yeah, I mean, Natalie was my roommate, but Miranda was always there. She was definitely like a roommate that just came by whenever she needed to. But yeah, we were all kind of there. I think that's kind of where we really like made our like true bond together. Like we went through that whole process of trying to get to the Olympics together. There were ups, there were downs, there were everything in between. But actually to be there for the first time in 12 years that a women's team was, a Canadian women's team was in the Olympics, like we went through all of the ups and downs and everything that we had to go through to get there. But to actually be there and to be amongst each other was a really great bonding experience for us. And we hold it up to this day. I mean, I talk to these girls, we're in group chats, we visit each other, we talk about everything under the sun together. But yeah, these are my true sisters for life. And the Olympics was just a notch in that pool for us.
Awesome, thanks, Leash. I just want to remind everyone, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A chat. Not necessarily the chat function, there's a whole Q&A section, put them in there so we can get to them. We're gonna move to Lizanne again, and Miranda. I want both of you guys to kind of tell us what that 2015 golden summer of, 2015 was like. We made some history that summer. I remember that, and it was a great time. Could you tell us what that experience was like for you all? Maybe we could start with you, Miranda.
Yeah, I was going to say, what a gentlewoman. She lets me go first. Well, I think a few of us touched on it today, and that is just the ability to be able to, we didn't touch on this yet, but I'll tie it in with something else that we touched on, but just the ability to play in your home country, because so many of us play overseas. I left for college when I was 17, and I haven't been back since, so that's about 15 years. So in those 15 years, I can count the number of times that I played before that 2015 tournament, like on one hand, maybe. Not even. We had played probably in Canada one time. And just when you're used to having either everybody cheering against you or just empty gyms, just the difference of having a gym full of Canadians cheering for you, the vibe in the gym in Toronto was just off the hook. And having like our family and our friends there supporting us, people who had never seen us play in person, it's just an incredible experience. And I'll tie that into what we were touching on before. The fact that the new generation, the younger generation, was able to come out to those games and see us live, I think made an indelible impact on the people coming up as well. Because I've had so many people reach out after that tournament, and because it was in the newspapers, it was on TV, it was everybody's like, oh, we have a national team, cool. It's just like the ability to be seen and to experience that firsthand, I think makes an incredible difference in people's dreams, their aspirations, their connections. So that tournament was more than just basketball, us dominating on the court and getting that gold medal. It was really just being able to share that with our community, our fellow Canadians, and then the following generation coming up.
Awesome.
I don't have too much more to add to that other than in my career with the national team, the amount of games that I got to play in Canada were so few. And so 2015, I think one of the questions in the chat was like, who are your greatest supporters? And I think across the board for many of us, and even for you folks at home, our families, like my parents are amazing. Like at training camps, they made sure to bring cupcakes because they knew maybe we had to try and be extra healthy with Team Canada. So they made sure to bring us chocolate so that we would like be okay. And to have them there, especially, I talked about hardships before. My father had spent that year before the Olympics was probably the hardest year of my life, and that I also lost my father, and he spent 6 months in the hospital in a really challenging medical situation. So to have my dad at the Pan Am Games, I mean, it's really funny because my dad almost became the mascot of the team and he was almost more famous than me. But like, it was so cool to have him there and my parents there and all of our friends and family there. And if you look at this team, like Mur's parents were always there, Kia's parents were always there, the Tatham parents, they're like all of our parents. Like we call everybody mom and dad. And that bond and doing that in Canada and then actually seeing the amount of young girls and young women who were in the gym, that still is probably the biggest highlight. I mean, it was cool. I was so happy for Kia too, to like beat up on her teammates and beat her Yukon teammates and play really well in that game. So that was fun too. But the next best was having our friends and family there.
Awesome. That time was so amazing. We got a couple questions that we can get to before we get to the Q&A because we have quite a few coming in for you all. But I want to touch on a couple more. Alisha, for you, you're now working in the NBA managing pro players. And in 2013, you were cut from the national team. And you never had that shot to go back to the Olympics like the rest of us did. What was that like? Could you tell us what that transition was like? Do you have any advice for young athletes that may get cut one day from a team?
Yeah, so after the 2012 Olympics, I was continually playing basketball. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do moving forward. I didn't know that I had another Olympics in the back of my head, but I knew that it was an option. And then when I got cut that summer, it was heartbreaking because I was like, what am I going to do next? You know, for most people, they'll go ahead and continue to play overseas. But like I said earlier, the Olympics was kind of like it for me. Like I knew that once I made it to Olympics, I had got my basketball dream, and that was kind of what I wanted to do. I didn't really have, I didn't really want to go back and play overseas just to play overseas. That just wasn't my thing. So I knew that I wanted to continue to go on and do something else. I had a lot of other interests that I wanted to do, but I just wasn't prepared. So that was the biggest thing. I didn't think, when I was in basketball, I only thought about basketball. And that was a disservice to me because, you know, sometimes you have an opportunity to leave when you want to, and sometimes you don't. And so I think it's important as student athletes that we kind of think about that before we leave the sport. I honestly think that when you're in sport, like stepping away from the sport a little bit and having some other interests while you're playing helps you. It helps you to play better, helps you to get your mind off of things. When you're playing a sport, there are a lot of ups and downs. And when you're only focused on one thing and your eyes on that kind of prize, and that's what it is, and you don't have any other sort of interests outside of that, it is very hard for you to overcome some of those obstacles. So having some other interests and understanding the opportunity to build your network, I think that's what happens. You can build your network a little bit while you have your other interests outside of it. Those are really important things to do. And I honestly feel that like you can play basketball and you can have other interests while you're playing. Kia's doing it. I mean, there are other people that do it, and Kia's doing it very well, you know? So that's a great example that's here right on this call. I honestly think it's the best thing for any athlete. Don't only just be a basketball player. We are all we are all things other than basketball. Like we have other interests. There are other things that we'd like to do. Tap into a couple of those while you're playing. That can sometimes get you out of that mode a little bit and kind of have you in a different mindset when you step off the court. You know, like you're not really thinking about a loss as much as possible because maybe you took up some sort of course or I don't know, whatever it is. But I would say definitely dabble into some other things while you're playing, and never take your sight off of retirement could be around the corner, and basketball and sport is not forever. So definitely be prepared as you're still playing.
Thank you for that, Alisha. Just to touch on what you're saying, I fully agree. You never fully know what's going to happen, and the basketball obviously doesn't continue to bounce forever. You spoke about Kia moving on and doing other things in her profession other than basketball. So Kia, you just recently started a new role at TSN. Obviously, it's during this pandemic, and I know it's a difficult time, but you often hear the word pivoting. How have you been able to manage this new role during this pandemic?
Yeah, it's been different, and I completely agree with everything that Alisha said. You know, at some point it stops bouncing, and to be frank, and unfortunately, a lot of times we as female athletes can't sit down and retire when our career's over. Like we're not NBA players who make all this money. It's like, we're done, cool, I'm gonna sit down. You a lot of times need another job. And that's why for the WNBA, you are not allowed to come out as a one and done in college. You have to go and get a degree so that you have something to fall back on. And so I actually signed this TSN deal before COVID started. I signed it in January and just told nobody. So I was prepared to be at home for the next 2 years instead of over in Australia where I had been playing. For me, it's always been about trying to figure out what my life looks like after basketball, just so that I know, because I've seen it a lot of times, and I obviously have a family full of athletes, that when the sport stops you oftentimes lose what you're doing. You have no idea what you're doing. And I think at some point in senior year in college at UConn, I was going through a tough time. And I remember thinking to myself, like, if there is no WNBA, if I don't get to the draft, then what's next? I didn't really have a plan. And I started to ask myself, who are you outside of basketball? And I didn't have very valid answers, in my opinion. So I had to start learning a little bit more on who I was on the outside and what I could do outside of my sport. I knew that I wanted to be in the sport. So at UConn, I actually started as a business major. And you have to declare when you're a junior. So before I declared, I said, is there sport marketing? And it had moved to a business, to a different school. So I had to kind of change it. So I actually was a sport and media. I created my own major. So I have sport management, communication, and business courses. And I completed 3 from all of there. So I kind of have more of a range to move around and do stuff because sport's a big part of my life and I want to be in it. I don't want to be a coach, but I wanted to find ways to stay in the sport and give back in the sport. So I think this new role that I have has been different because essentially I'm usually in the studios. I worked with them with March Madness prior to being on this role. And now I don't do it in this room, but I have another room in the house that's all set up and it's a studio in itself and it's literally my bedroom and the camera's in there and you would think I'm in a different kind of studio area. So I do think COVID has forced me to kind of sit down. I'm way busier in COVID than I have been as a professional basketball player, which I'm very grateful for, but it's very different. My schedules are very different. My workouts are very different. I have to finish my day by 11 o'clock workout wise so that I can do the rest of my actual like daily day jobs. So I think it's just been really about finding new things about myself and finding time to sit down and maybe read some more and be around my family because I'm never around them. Watch my nephew grow up. That stuff's been great, but the pivoting it's been difficult. It's been pretty hard. I won't lie.
Yeah, pivoting is very hard during this time. I'm noticing it a lot as a coach, and I'm sure we're all noticing it even in as basketball players and in our professional lives. So we're gonna get to some of the questions that our viewers are asking. Thank you, ladies, for sharing these amazing stories with everyone. We got quite a few questions we want to try and get to. So I'm going to start off with the first one in the chat. Did you have a goal of being an Olympian when you were a kid, or did you just fall into it? Which we talked about, right? A bunch of us fell into it. Liz and I. I'm not sure if anyone had an actual goal of it when you were a kid. Did anyone? No.
I did when I was 15. That's when I went to the senior women's team training camp. That was kind of when I sort of had a dream.
Okay. We have a French question, Liz. The next one in there.
Yeah, I saw that. So the question, what do you guys do when you're down? So I think that this would maybe be a great one to go around the table because there's a lot that have come up, like, how do you find inspiration? This is a really hard time. How can we, like, our dream is almost on hold. Like, what do you recommend we do? And it's come up a lot. And so maybe if we go all around, I can start. Honestly, what I've done, because I still feel like my life is on hold and my basketball career is over. So I can only imagine for those who are preparing for the Olympics, or you guys are preparing for your youth sports season or your CJEP season or your high school season. It feels devastating. It feels like you're being cheated almost. And I work now at the Canadian Olympic Committee. So I work with all of the 55 sports in Canada, and we're seeing it across the board. The one advice that I can give, and what's gotten me through some of the hardest times in my career, is looking for gratitude, finding gratitude in every day. And if you can find that moment of gratitude, I found that's what motivated me when I didn't feel like going on and I didn't feel like continuing, and it just felt like it was impossible. I promise you, if you're good, I was an English kid from Quebec who never played for Team Canada, and I ended up on Team Canada. I didn't play for Team Quebec. They find you. If you just stay positive, if you stay focused on the prize, and hey, you can also reach out to schools if that's what your plan is. Like, they might not know about you. You are the greatest kept secret then. I wish I reached out to more people, and I would have reached out to Team Canada when I was 17 to be like, hey, hello, I'm here. You need me. So there's people that need you and need your energy at home. So find gratitude and reach out to people.
Anyone else when they're down? There's another question very similar to it. What was the other one? How do you prepare mentally before a game? That's another one that's somewhat similar. Anyone want to tackle that one?
I can talk to Both, kind of. So most people don't know, when I did do my ankle earlier in the season, in the bubble season, I tore a couple things in there and I decided that I was going to play because I'm stubborn. And so now I have been sitting down, literally not running, for, I think we're going on 3 months now. And this doesn't happen to me very often. So I get very antsy about feeling like I'm falling behind during this segment, right? And now everything's starting to go into lockdown again. So it's kind of like, I know in COVID, a lot of you guys are probably feeling like, I can't train, I can't work out, I can't do all this stuff. So am I falling behind? Am I losing all my skills and all of that stuff? So I feel like in those tough times, one of the things that I read in some book, it was like Atomic Habits or something like that. And he was talking about how when you create a habit that actually will help you benefit anything in life, it's boring. Like going into the gym every single day, like that I go into and I work out in, and doing the exact same thing with Justin. Justin's my trainer. When we go in there and we do form shots, which I can do with my eyes closed, it's so boring and it's so tedious and it's the same thing over and over again. But it's making a big difference in the long run. It's like going outside and going for a walk, even though it's not the run that I want to go on because I can't physically run on my ankle. And it feels boring and it's not doing anything for me, but doing it every single day is actually increasing my anaerobics. So technically it's actually helping me do something, but it's boring. So I find that a lot of times when you get stuck in these situations and you feel like you can't do what you want to do and you want to push through it, gratitude is a great way to do it. I have a gratitude journal beside my bed every morning that I write in. It takes 5 minutes. I do it before I go to bed, and that helps me feel better about just waking up in the morning. But it's just finding things that, even though they're boring, being grateful that you're able to do it during this time, because there's not a lot of people who can do these things. And just understanding that you're not falling behind. We're all in the same situation here. Like, I'm a WNBA player who can barely get an open gym around here. So, it's the same situation that we're all in. It's how am I going to continue to get better? Maybe that's watching film. That's seeing a different side of the game. If you're not necessarily a film watcher, watch some film. See how you can get better. Watch film of players. I like to watch film of like Jason Tatum. I think he's great. I think I can add a lot of things from his game into my game. And then spend time with your family. Like, those are people who are always going to be there for you. And that's whether you're really good at your sport, whether you're having a bad time at your sport, like whether you're losing confidence, not losing, like have confidence, because this is just a tough time for everybody. So those are people that can help you through it. Ask questions and admit when you don't know something. Ask somebody who knows or is like an expert in it, because that'll just help you feel better, because it's uncertainty is what we're dealing with right now, and you just have to find a way through it.
Yeah, just to
Great
add
answer.
go
ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add like a little bit onto that, because Kia inspired me. She touched on something that I think us as athletes especially are hyper focused on, and that is the result. Our like competitive side wants to always have that goal, that result, that end product. And right now, like we all know, uncertainty and COVID have swept that all away, that whole illusion that we actually have control over what's going on. And it's kind of nice in a way, if you look at that silver lining, that it forces us to shift our attention from that result that actually ultimately we never actually have control over, to the process, which is completely within our control, regardless of what we are doing. So both Lizanne and Kia mentioned some of those things in the process right now, what we can be doing, the attitude that we're bringing to each day, both on and off the court, leveling up our game, leveling up our mentality, the mind, that's the game that's going on in our mind, and just leveling up the excellence that we bring to each activity. So you are adding to what you want that end result to be. Like, the result is not going to come just from wishing on it. The process is what's going to lead you to that result. So don't get caught up just looking and staring at the result, hoping for it to come. Your focus really should be right here, because that's going to lead you to where you need to be.
There's one
Great
question
answer.
that sorry, I'm going to jump in. There's one question I see in here that I absolutely love. And what advice would you give to your younger self? I think that is such a beautiful one. And if I could just say, you're enough. I wish somebody would have told me this. I wish more people would have told me this, and I would have told myself, You are enough, and the world needs more of you. Whatever you bring, your personality, your heart, your spirit, as a teammate, as a woman, you're enough, and we need more of it. So bring more of it. Don't be scared. Don't shy away. Because I spent too much time in my life being worried about what everyone else is going to think. And you're hiding your magic, and you're hiding what everybody else needs from you. I would love to hear the advice that my sisters have for their younger selves, though.
That's a great one, Liz. I love that. I love that. Does anybody else have advice they'd give to their younger self? Alisha, how about you?
Yeah, I would say, I love that question. I would say just like, and even staying with what Mer was saying, to just be in the moment. I think the process for me, like I had this dream of becoming an Olympian when I was 15. And when I got there, that like didn't compare to the whole process that it took to get there. Like everything that I have learned throughout that process has brought me to where I am right now, and has made me into the woman that I am today. And it helps me to like show up in the right way in my career, in my marriage, like everything. So my whole process in getting to my ultimate goal is what really prepared me for where I am right now and who I am today. So I would just say stay in the moment, and really like the process is really where it's at. So
Nice. Key, I think you had something there.
Yeah, I would say along those lines, those are both things that I wish I would have told myself as well. Another big thing with me was like, just be confident in like what you can do and like who you are. That's something I think I've always struggled with, is just like everybody else had faith that I could get to a certain level with my sport or a certain level in school. And I was always like, we'll see. If I get there, I get there. It'll work out. But I also would add to that, I'm not old, but I was there before Instagram was a thing, right? And now a bunch of people, I'm sure a lot of people on this call grew up with social media and always had it just there. And that's a confidence killer in itself, that damn machine that is so exciting, that distracts us all so much. Just remember that people are only going to put out what they want you to see. If you see a highlight tape or you see a mixtape from some player in the States and you're comparing yourself to them, I promise you, they did not put up the 12 layups that they missed in that game, but they put up the 4 that they made because they were fancy, right? So like paying attention to that and protecting your confidence in a social media world is so much different than I feel like how I grew up. We had instant messenger. That was my go-to. I had all my crushes on there, texts in there, but now everything is in your hand and it's in your pocket. So just remember, like, confidence comes from you. You're the only person who can give you confidence. I could give you 50,000 compliments right now and you still might not believe them. That's okay. But you have to find that in yourself. And 50% of people are going to like what you say. 50% of people aren't going to like what you say. All that matters is what you like about yourself. And look in the mirror and tell yourself how hot you are every day, because I do that. It works.
Awesome. Mer, did you have anything for your younger self?
Yeah, I mean, everybody said some great points. I would have said all of that to my younger self. Definitely not to waste time or energy comparing myself with anybody else, because that gives you zero in return. And also just embrace the obstacles. Life is not easy. This road in basketball is not easy. And honestly, the stuff that makes it tough, the stuff that's so crappy in the moment, is really building the character that you need to really go the long run. Everything, all the trials that I've gone through is so crappy during it, but I look back on that and I know that that's the reason that I am here today with you guys. The reason that I've continued to play so long is because those tests made me a stronger person, and they really sharpened the skills that I already had, or like tested my weaknesses and made me step up in that area as well. So don't look for the easy path, and that ties in with comparing yourself with other people that you think they have all this, they're getting this, they're getting that contract or whatever. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Look at your own path. Be grateful for what you have, and know that even if you're not on the easy path, you have all these obstacles. You know that it can lead you to the place that you want to go to, if you react in the right way, in a positive way where you can take that. That doesn't mean you have to be positive all the time. We have crappy days, but turn that around and keep working towards what you need to work on.
We have a lot of questions still coming in. I'm probably going to spend just a couple more minutes on a few, and then we're going to wrap this up, ladies. There's one kind of intertwining as far as how would you describe yourself as a teammate, or how did you deal with not playing? So if you could describe yourself as a teammate, maybe let's try and do it in, like, if you could do it in one sentence, what would you say? And then maybe someone can wrap up with, if you're not playing, or how did that feel? What kind of, how did that feel as a teammate if you're not playing? So Liz, maybe you could start with, how would you describe yourself as a teammate?
Can we describe each other as teammates?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, go for it, Mer.
Mer.
Oh no, I put it on myself.
Don't actually.
Well, I'll start with Liz, because that's the first that came to mind. Kia already touched on it. She's an energy giver. The other thing about her that stands out that I really value in a teammate is just this selflessness, giving your all to your team and just being there. And that's part of what being a teammate is all about. Like, it's not about you, you're giving to something greater than you, and knowing that she's there to ride or die for you. She's there to motivate you, hype you up. Like, if you're down, I'll call Liz and she'll be like, you're the most beautiful, intelligent person. Nobody can stand in your way. You have all of this. You're going to kill it. Don't matter what it is. Everybody knows what I'm talking about, because she's your biggest hype woman. So that kind of teammate is an incredible person to have on your team. I'll throw it to the others.
I could definitely say the same about Liz. I mean, I would say your positivity stood out to me, and also your feistiness stood out to me. And that sort of energy allowed me to be, a little bit more. So I don't know. And then off the court, I would say too, just as a teammate and as a person, you were always that great person to come to if you needed advice with something. Like, you always had an answer for something, whether it be somewhere where I'm down or I'm up, where I'm trying to make a decision. You were always that person that I can come to for anything, and even up to this day. So.
Oh, gee, guys, that's so nice. I think one trait that is unanimous across this whole group is like sheer competitors, like strong women in whatever regard. Like, for everybody at home, if you would not have seen practices, we used to literally try and take each other's heads off every day. But then literally as soon as practice was over, have an ability to have such love and care for each other. And that's one thing that I think is so beautiful about this group. And we had very different personalities. I would say Kia and I are probably the more vocal, expressive, like throw it all out in your face kind of person. Miranda is the cool, calm, and collected, like brings just such calmness, and like she's so wise to the group. So whereas Kia and I might be like the very volatile ones all over, like Mur was calm, and then Tamara was such a leader by example. Well, I would say in like terms of being wise women, like Alisha, you're that too. Like, you're a source of calm and like clarity with the group. And Tamara is just a teammate who's always going to lead by example, always there for you. Low key, so funny, but because she looks like she's a bit more quiet, you don't like, she's not the biggest joker out there. But one thing is that it's that balance between the two. And I think in a team, you need all of that. I know one of the questions was, how do you deal with maybe not playing as much? I think I'm suited to answer this one, because I had a very challenging time in the national team where I didn't always play a lot. And I would be over in Europe, like winning MVP of the league, doing amazing things. And then you come to the national team and like you sit on the bench and you don't have that same role. And it is hard. And I think everyone here, if you're competitive and you're not playing every single minute of the game, like you're not happy. And that's what makes you a great athlete. One thing that shifted for me and allowed me to have a great career is that I legit felt and believed that my teammates' success was my own and that I shared in their success. And if you can get to that place where you really, like in your heart, want your teammates to succeed, but still want yourself to succeed, you will succeed and you will be successful. If you're that invested in other people's dreams, your dreams come true by nature. And so for all of you that aren't playing as much as you want to, you still bring something important. But that whole thing about be yourself, the world needs more of you. If you sit there and you're quiet and you hide away and no, you're not bringing it and you're not getting other people's dreams out there. And so try that. Try and give energy and share in other people's playing time as your own success.
And just to add to that, Liz was the kind of teammate that was the same whether she played 30 minutes in that game or she didn't play at all in that game. And when you're somebody who might be upset about what your role is or what your minutes are, like that's the prime example of having a teammate who is there giving their all, is passionate about their team. It's like, you get a block, I get a block, right? Like, you know what I mean? But it's like having a person like that on your team is like indispensable. Like if they're the same, no matter what's happening, like you were getting the same energy from Liz every single time. And you couldn't have a bad day at practice because Liz was in there having a great day. So you were having a great day too. That stuff is like unmeasurable when you have teammates like that.
All right, guys. And with that being said, we want to thank you guys for all tuning in. We had a blast and we couldn't have done it without you guys. If any of you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out to U of T or any of us, and we'll try to get back to you. But until then, we just want to say have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, and hope to see you soon. Thank you, guys.
All for joining. Thank you all. Have a Merry Christmas. Teamies, thank you. Justin, thank you. And can't wait to see everyone when it is safe to do so. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank you.
Happy
Make sure you
holidays.
follow the women's basketball team on their trip to Tokyo this summer. They're about to win a medal. Follow them all on Instagram. Follow Team Canada. Happy holidays.
Love it.